Okay, I'm gonna try this again. Looks like it's working. We're gonna find out soon on LinkedIn. No offense to everybody who's on Twitter and YouTube, but LinkedIn's my jam. So I gotta make sure my people on LinkedIn are seeing this live stream, and hopefully StreamYard does not have the same issues. Although it looks like we're having the same connectivity issues. Come on, StreamYard. I believe in you. I know that you can get this on LinkedIn. Uh-oh. And
gotta make sure that.
Yep.
I gotta make sure my people on LinkedIn are seeing this live stream.
Yep, we are live on LinkedIn. Okay, great. All right, there we go. Man, I love when I see those numbers go up. Love it seeing climb. All right, so first of all, before I talk about this formula behind me, and yes, I think I found a way that for MedTech to have a path to autonomous surgical robotics. I know, we've all been wanting this. Quick shout out though to the LinkedIn community, because yesterday I launched my newsletter called The State of MedTech. I just figured it's a great way for those who have been, interested in my writing and my articles, just to find an easier path to you. And I've just been super, just humbled the fact that it's been 24 hours and I have over 2,600 people subscribed to it and growing. Every time I refresh the screen, more people subscribe to it, so I appreciate it. So if you go to my LinkedIn profile or just search The State of MedTech, you can check that out. I'm going to try, be doing a weekly newsletter just on exciting things in the world of MedTech, not just technology, but even new approaches to marketing and sales strategies. Physicians, I think they're going to benefit a lot from it. So let's get into this topic real quick, okay? So how do I think that we're going to get this path to autonomous surgical robotics? And feel free to drop a comment or question below. Okay, so I wrote this article about the metaverse, got a lot of questions about it. Here's my path to how I think we can actually get to autonomous surgical robotics, okay? So simple formula, VR times an infinite number of surgeons will get us, within the metaverse, will get us to autonomous surgical robotics, okay? How is that possible? Very simply put, here we have surgeons, okay? So I want you to imagine all kinds of surgeons, people who are first-year fellows, people who have been surgeons and practicing for many, many years, okay? Using VR to go into the metaverse to do surgical robotic training, okay? And try different cases, okay? So obviously, use VR, you're in the metaverse, okay? And you have a variety of different scenarios where you're using a robot to do a certain type of surgery, right? And there'll be, of course, a variety of different scenarios, for let's say a case. Let's say it's spinal decompression, and you have a robot that can do the discectomy, they can put the screws in, right? But there's a variety of different types of that same procedure with different types of patients, different scenarios, et cetera, right? When you have an infinite amount of surgeons doing that, and you can do this at infinite amount of times, right? So think about it, in this sense. How much time does it take to set up a surgical robotic lab, right? I used to do those all the time. You have to get a cadaver, you have to fly the surgeons, you have to do all these things. But if the surgeon's able to do this from the comfort of their own home, right? And let's say that one part of the surgery, let's say discectomy, right? Which I think like most surgeons, it takes them, let's say with a robot, hypothetically, it'll take them 30 or 40 minutes to do. Let's say that surgeon now, instead of doing this procedure in a surgical robotic lab, let's say once a month, which is a lot, right? Let's say they can do it every other night, on the weekends, whenever they want, and surgeons of all different backgrounds and training types, right? At that point, you have an infinite amount of data, right? I think the thing is that when I speak to engineers, it's not that hard to develop an autonomous robot. What's hard is developing an autonomous robot that knows how to execute in a variety of different surgical procedures. So once you have a lot of data and you use that with machine learning, right, you can find ways to essentially create an autonomous robot in real life. And once that happens, and think about this, let's say hundreds of thousands of surgeons focus on this one specific part of the procedure, right? And you have infinite amounts of data, right? That can be fed into an autonomous robot that can replicate that in real life, right? And of course, that'll create best practices. So whatever this robot ends up learning, right, create some best practices as to like the best way to do this in real life. Those best practices are now looped back to the surgeons who implement that in real life, but then they continue to go on, right, and practice this same type of surgery. And through this loop, think about this going over, thousands and millions of times. you'll have enough data to create autonomous robots. In which case, and let's just project into the future 10 years, 20 years. So let's say you do that and you say, well, that's going to put all the surgeons out of the job. No, it won't. So technically, what if there was a world, and again, I'm just, coming up with a hypothesis here, that you have the robots that are essentially executing the actual surgery. The surgeon is observing and monitoring these robots, right? But then in order for these robots to get better, the surgeon has to be proficient in the procedure and doing it in the metaverse, because that's the only way that you can get an infinite amount of data to the robot. That's, I think, the path of how you get to autonomous robotics, right? Autonomous surgical robots, right? So this is really interesting. What's interesting to me, though, is that none of the surgical robotics companies, to my knowledge, own a VR platform, right? So I wonder what the M&A activity is going to look like in the next 5 years. And I don't know if that's a good thing, by the way, because it could be good in the sense that, let's take a perfect example. Intuitive Surgical has their own VR system. So to train the Da Vinci surgery, a robot, you have to use the Da Vinci VR headset and within the metaverse, right? But the problem with that is that then we're siloing off all of this data and these learnings to these companies, right? And there's a bit of an issue with legally, I think, when it comes to creating monopolies, right? So how do you manage something like that? But that's something to be worried about later on, because again, like if Intuitive has their own VR headset and robot, and then Medtronic does, and then J&J does, then I don't know how innovation is going to end up happening, because in order for a company to develop a new surgical robot, like they need access to that kind of data, they need to develop it, right? So I don't know, like for this data, maybe the hardware and the environments are owned by certain companies, but the data can be owned by the medical community at large. I'm not sure what that looks like, right? The last thing I want to point out, though, and this goes back to the other live stream that I did, is if you remember this behavior change formula, right? Again, the y-axis is motivation. This is ease, right? So motivation divided by ease. As you go here, this is the action line where you have a behavior change. You have to find ways to increase the motivation and decrease the ease, right? And ease can be defined as opportunity and ability. With the metaverse, using VR, you give every single surgeon the opportunity and the ability to go on, because even let's just say it's a first-year resident, right? A first-year resident who's still learning some basics can go into the metaverse, use a VR headset, and try some of these procedures. And that still collects data, right? And I think the most important thing is that to go from machine learning to something, let's say AI, you need infinite amounts of data, right? In different cases. In which case, again, projecting decades into the future, if you have a lot of people who come into first year, second year, third year of training and residency, et cetera, and so on and so forth, you're able to track the progression and improvement of those people from day one, which then will help you improve on the curriculum, because it's like, hey, well, maybe they don't need to be trained on these certain parts of the procedures because these things can be automated, or they can be handled by some other function, maybe that a certain phase of the procedure is being removed, right? And that way you start tightening up these procedures, so the human being the surgeon, focuses on the most important parts of it, and then that's how you start optimizing things. And I think that's the whole point of surgical robotics, is that not only does it automate certain parts of the procedure, but more importantly, takes a procedure from, let's say, 25 different steps and narrows it down to like 10, right? So that's essentially the formula that I think is going to happen, and at least that's what I think what's going to happen when it comes to VR and surgical robotics. So let me know what you guys think. Let me see. So far, no questions, and I got to run. So if you have any questions or comments, go ahead and shoot me a DM. Drop a comment actually in this live stream, even if you're watching it on demand or recording it, or the recording of it, because I will answer those questions. So hope this has been helpful. And hey, go subscribe to the newsletter, The State of MedTech. You can find on my profile on LinkedIn. See you later, guys.